this is Creative Banter. Emmy gets a bit restless this episode and needs to step out of the studio, which leaves just Ben and I to lead the conversation. Not ideal, but we make it work. With the second issue of Nature Vision magazine out in the world, we touch base with how that has been received, as well as the importance of representing lesser-known photographers. In a callback to episode 36, Creeping on Social Media, screen time is brought up yet again, which leads to discussion on the correlation between happiness and age. Let's dive right into this, shall we? We'll see how Emmy does this time around. She's on my lap again, so.
Nice. How has she been doing?
She's been good. It's been stressful though. I mean, not gonna lie.
Yeah. Oh yeah. It always will be with a new dog, especially a young puppy.
Yeah, especially two of them that I have to watch throughout the day. Like if it was just Emmy, it wouldn't be nearly as bad. Like Emmy she's good for the most part. Doesn't really go out looking for trouble if she can't see me kind of deal. And whereas with Lucy's just she's a mess.
Yeah. You never know what their personalities will be until you get them, and then start working with them.
Yeah. So I'm just looking forward to them getting a little bit older and working on training with them a little bit more, and hopefully then they can calm down where I can have them outside and I don't have to be constantly like on their ass with everything. Yeah. Because, I mean, that's the biggest thing. Like, I try to do, like, edit the podcast or even do reading or a little bit of writing or something. And I'm like, I really can't. Like, unless I put them in their crate and have, like, a 2-hour nap time for them or something.
Yeah.
Then trying to watch two of them and get work done, it's impossible. So I got to work on a better system for that because of being charged with both of them. So.
Yeah, are they at the stage where they're constantly getting in trouble and finding things to chew on they're not supposed to and such?
Yeah. Lucy especially likes to go forage for mushrooms, which is not the best thing because dogs really shouldn't eat mushrooms. So yeah, she likes to go off into the gardens and forage for mushrooms, especially now that we had a bunch of rain recently, and now this week we're looking at like the 80s for temperature, which is not great in October. Not what I expect in October, but that's how it goes.
Yeah, it's not very fall-like. Now here it's been high 80s today. I mean, the past, 3-4 days, it felt so much like fall. I mean, we'd have the windows open at night and it was nice and chilly. It was good. Today is a bit on the warm side, but it's that time of year when we get the Santa Ana conditions, which is when the winds reverse and they come in from the east instead of from the west. And there's something about it. I think it's like the negative ions, and it's something I've mentioned in the past on the podcast, but it leaves you feeling really, really good. The air is very clear. It's very, you can see very, very far, and it just has a good feeling to it, which is nice. And for me, the combination of that warmth plus the winds coming from the east, that's very much the feeling of fall, even though temperature-wise and on paper, it doesn't seem like it.
Yeah.
But it's such a beautiful day out there today.
Yeah, that's the biggest pain too between these temperatures and trying to watch these guys is it's not very like relaxing to just sit outside. It's one of those like, I go outside, I'm like, all right, let's go outside. You guys have toys here. You can play with each other. You can relax in like my visual area. You still have plenty of room to move around. They're like, no, we have 6 acres here. We're going to go explore. Like, I don't want to be on my feet. Like looking at my watch, I've been on my feet for 12 hours today. I'm like, no, I don't need this.
Yeah.
So, but it's fun. It is what it is. They'll grow out of it. And I'll get used to it more, but I just got to find a better system for getting some work done so I can get some more work done for the winter edition of Nature Vision magazine. So we're getting started back with that again.
Nice. And, because the second issue came out. So
yep.
You're already hard at work on the next one.
Yeah. Luckily, there's not a ton of work for this one because I've been already preparing for it throughout the summer when I was working on the the second issue. So we've got a couple articles already in and just a few more that we need, an interview or so that we need, a couple little things, but nothing major this time around, which is nice. Kind of staying ahead of myself if I can.
Yeah. How do you guys figure out who you're going to select for the interviews?
I just find someone that I want to interview and I go for it. David picks the featured NPN members and I deal with the other, like, more major interview, I guess to say.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I just find people that I am interested in. This one with Alex Noriega, when I interviewed him, that was kind of a last minute thing because the other interview that I had fell through, at least for this issue. So I try to pick people that aren't in the limelight as much, but obviously Alex tends to be. Like, he's pretty well known in the community.
Yeah, for certain.
But yeah,
I definitely, it seems like there's always that balance in terms of, if it's a familiar face, that's cool and all. And I think that's something that will certainly get more attention on. I hear a puppy.
Oh yeah.
Yep. But it'll definitely get more, people like seeing the familiar faces and stuff. But I definitely do appreciate the interviews with people I may not have heard of before, people that may not have as much of a presence out there.
Yeah.
So that's pretty cool that you are primarily looking for those. Are those happy puppy noises?
I have no idea how to read her sometimes. She's weird. Like, she sounds like a goose when she's like whining for you.
Yeah.
It's just, I don't know. She's content, but I think she just woke up from a nap a little while ago. So it was like bad timing on my part for that. I should have kept her up a little bit longer, but I don't know. But anyway,
I'm just picturing like a little gremlin that you have there. That's what the sounds are reminding me of.
Yeah. No, but with the interviews, I definitely do want to focus more with people who aren't always in the spotlight. Like, I'm trying to figure out who we're going to do for the winter issue. And with the winter one, we're focusing more on getting female representation in. So a lot of the articles are coming in, or that I have already planned, are from female photographers.
That's good.
The interview I want to focus on a female photographer, but I also don't want it to just seem like, oh, we're doing an issue all on women, and then for the rest of the time it's no women or very few.
Yeah, because that feels a little like patronizing in a way.
Exactly. Yeah. So this is just more. It just so happened to be that a lot of the female photographers I had reached out to, their schedules were aligned for being able to write something for us or provide something for us for the winter issue. And then I'll continue to use either them or additional female photographers in the future. Just like in the spring, I plan on doing a little bit more wildlife. So sneak peek to our viewers or our listeners for if they subscribe to it.
Yeah.
What to expect. But yeah, so I got to figure out who I want to interview. But other than that, I mean, yeah, it's going pretty okay.
That's cool. A little earlier today, and so we're recording this on a Tuesday. Normally we record it on a Thursday, but I'm going to be heading up to the Eastern Sierra with my wife, which looks like we're going to have some great weather. The fall colors run in a little bit late, so it means that we're going to have some really nice color when we're there. But since we're recording this on a Tuesday, I tried to sneak in a little bit of a bike ride this morning. And so I drove down to the coast, and then there's this really cool bike path that takes you basically along the highway up the coast. And so I did about 40 miles. But there's this photographer in town, and I had to look this up. There's, according to Google, it said that there's 1.38 million people in San Diego. I think that might just be the city limits. It might be more beyond that. But there's a local photographer in town, and he goes backpacking in the Sierra Nevada. He does all these hikes all over and stuff. And he's been going to Torrey Pines a lot with his girlfriend. And so I was like cycling past that area, and I was thinking about that. And then I saw them right there. They're just like right at their car, just as I'm like cycling past them.
Yeah.
It was just like the strangest coincidence. The fact that I'm thinking about them, then I'm seeing them. I'm like, am I actually seeing this? And I was going by at probably about 25 miles an hour. So I couldn't really say anything by the time like my brain registered what it was that I was seeing. But it kind of goes back to that whole thing of, what are the odds of something like that happening? It was kind of a surreal sort of moment. But yeah, it's just that thing where sometimes they'll say like, oh, you're from this city. Oh, so you must know so-and-so because they're also from that city. And it's like, what are the... Yes, I do. Yes, I do know them. So, so just, there's something out there, which is kind of fun.
Yeah. In other updates away from cycling and all of your fun adventures.
Spandex, yes.
Spandex. So a while back, we talked about screen time. This was maybe in the spring, I think it was, that we talked. Something like that, whatever. And we had talked about trying to get away from screens. We had talked about, I think that you said at that time your screen time was down to like 2 or 3 hours, maybe less per day.
I'll have to look that up. I'm average 2 hours and 50 minutes, so it's more than I'd like, but...
Well, yeah, that's still, as we had, it seems like a repeat of a conversation because I went through and looked at it again today, just curious. Yeah. And it's a shame that I can't see like a year over year kind of result or a month over month.
Yeah, to see the comparison, yeah.
Yeah, because I would love to know what it was prior to downloading Instagram. I would love to know what it was this time last year even, or even just the beginning of this year compared to the end of this year. But regardless, my average through most of September was about 6 hours per day. And then today's screen time, Emmy, shush. Today's screen time is around 7.5 hours. And it's about 5 o'clock my time. I'm like, that's probably not good.
Now, do you think that's also partially because you got the 2 puppies you're looking after, so you can't really...
Yeah.
Like the short attention span of being able to look at your phone real quick and do something, you could do that in the little bits throughout the day add up.
Give me a minute here, Ben. I'm going to take her over to my mom. Little one. Why are you being a nudge? Anyway, I'm back now without the puppy.
No more puppy noises in the background.
No more puppy noises. I handed her off to my mom, who was busy trying to train Lucy a little bit.
I think we're gonna lose about half the audience because they're gonna be like, man, no more puppy noises.
Probably. That's the best part. I mean, trying to focus on the conversation when you have puppy noises around you and to have a wriggling puppy in your lap is a little difficult. But of course, I put her down right aside of my mom with Lucy, who's in the grass, and I would go walk away or whatever, and she starts following me. I'm like, you didn't want to be in my lap or be like in this situation, and now you're going to follow me to go back into that situation.
Yeah. She wants it on her terms. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. But yeah, regarding the screen time situation, that's just, I don't know. It's definitely because of the puppies that I'm like, just I'm watching them and I need some form of entertainment like outside of that. And so I just resort to like Instagram or to just playing on my phone in general, because I can't do that kind of like deep work that I would want to otherwise. Yeah. And
are you still watching a lot of like the YouTube shorts? I think that's what it was last time.
It's not YouTube shorts now. It's Instagram Reels and just flipping through those.
I refuse to watch them. Like I'll get the suggestions, like if I'm scrolling through stories or it says, here are some ones. I'm like, yeah, that's looks like the thing I would want to watch, but I won't because I'm like, I know it's just going to suck me in. Yeah. And I think it's just like that stubbornness comes out. I'm like, no, I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to watch those.
Right. That's the problem, like, especially in the morning. So the routine has been that my girlfriend wakes up around 6 or so. By about 6:30, Emmy will wake up and have to go outside. So I'll take Emmy outside and then she lays in bed with me for a little bit, maybe like an hour or so, just to kind of get her a little bit more sleep on my end and keep her watched, without forcing her back in her crate. And during that hour or so, I'll just be on my phone. And it's these little things, like I was thinking about it today when I was going through the screen time, like that's 7.5 hours today that is essentially wasted.
Yeah.
That wasn't used productively. I could see...
That's a whole work day, basically.
Exactly. Yeah. I could see that being... Like, I wouldn't mind it so much if it was 7.5 hours of me reading through Substack articles or doing something somewhat productive, like typing notes on my phone, writing an article on my phone instead of on the computer, something along those lines, or even reading books through my phone. Then that screen time, at least to me, is used in a productive manner. Like, I can say, yeah, I used that 7 hours on my phone, but it's 7 hours doing something that is helping me on my phone.
Yeah.
But still, every time that I go and I look at it, it's one of those deals of like, I know I need to change this. And I know in general, there are a lot of habits in my life that I need to change to better myself. And I want to do them, but I'm seriously lacking that motivation to do them. And that whole motivational aspect is serious. It's really killing any drive, of course, to do anything. I mean, like, and that goes with a lot, but yeah, right now, like, screen time needs to be cut down and try and find ways. Even like if I'm looking through my phone in the morning for that hour, well, that's an hour that I could be reading or could be writing a little bit while she's playing aside of me or something, or journaling or whatever. So just need to make those little changes as much as I can to kind of get
now,
away
what about the days when you have like a lot of work to do for NPN, for example? Do you know what kind of screen time you have on those days? If you have like some deadlines coming up, if it's crunch time, do you have a feeling for how much screen time you'd have on a day like that?
Let me go into my settings and see.
Because it'd be interesting to see in that case by how much it drops or whether it still stays pretty steady. And I would assume it will probably still stay relatively steady.
So if I go back to, when is a good day for that? It definitely drops off a little bit when I'm not, or when I am busy. Like, I know that I wasn't paying attention to my phone as much when I was going through and formatting the magazine. And that was like the busiest section of doing everything.
Yeah.
But otherwise, if I'm sending out emails or I'm just doing general day-to-day stuff for it, unless I'm actively reading an article and reviewing it for submission, or I'm doing magazine layout, or I'm writing an article myself, most of the time I have my phone right there aside of me to play to that distraction. And again, that goes into like the ADHD aspect of like, I edit this podcast and I'm also playing a game on my phone. So there's that like split attention kind of thing that goes on. The same with NPN.
Yeah, there's something that I noticed probably within the past day or so, which was a little weird, where I think it was more toward the evening and I was scrolling through something on the phone. And for whatever reason, at that point in time, seeing the stuff scroll by, it almost gave me just an ever so very, very, very slight sense of vertigo, where I'm just like, oh, I don't like this. And I don't know if it was just some like temporary thing or whatever. Like it was just enough where I just felt a little bit off. And what I found is that if I just put the phone down and if I just like stared at something that was like non-moving, in this case, it was just like a brick part of the fireplace, just stared at that, all of a sudden that feeling kind of went away. And I don't know what it was, but I'm like, I don't like this. But at the same time, you know, maybe this will encourage me to not look at the phone as much. And maybe this is just my brain's way of saying, nope, too much. Don't want to see more of this. You know, let's shut this off. So in that sense, maybe not a bad thing. But yeah, it was really weird.
Yeah, I've felt like similar ways when it comes to if I'm sat at my desk for the majority of the day, just on my laptop or playing on my phone, just looking at screens in general, especially back during COVID when I was going through college and dealing with all of that online schooling. I would definitely get super, super sick of looking at the screens. But of course, most of my entertainment, ways of entertainment were like linked to screens. I'd sit down to relax and watch TV or a movie or play a video game or something. And it was like, I'm still looking at a screen. I don't want to be doing it. So, yeah, I mean, yeah, it's just a matter of trying to figure out how ways to change all that stuff. And listening to your body in your case as a way of saying, yeah, maybe this isn't such a good thing to be doing, and maybe I could be using my time more productively.
Yeah. There was something that I heard on the radio a little while back, and I don't remember what the source was, but it was some sort of study about general happiness in relation to age. And it was interesting because it does mirror very much what my experience has been so far. When I mentioned it to my wife, she was like, yeah, I totally see that as well. It was talking about how, as people are kids, they're generally decently happy until, right around adolescence, and it drops off. And I think it said between like 9 and 16 or whatever, it really starts to drop off. But what was interesting beyond that is that it was then a very steady climb through, 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s. And I think it was said only in like the 90s it starts to drop off. And I was mentioning that to my wife because we're just thinking about how, we're in our early 40s now. And we're just thinking like, man, 40s are better than 30s. And then we're thinking about like, yeah, the 20s kind of sucked. And so maybe we're like, man, by the time like people are retired, they must be, having a jolly old time. So it was just kind of a interesting thing about that. And also just trying to like correlate that with social media exposure and everything. I was just thinking back to, when I'm just glad that none of that was around when, I was in my teens, because it seems like that is only going to make that point when one is not feeling great already. The happiness is already down a bit and feels like that's only going to be pushed down further based on social media. But it was interesting, and it definitely mirrored both my wife and my experience, just looking back on the different decades and then realizing, things will get even better with time, which is kind of nice.
I also think that heavily depends on your personal outlook in life and your circumstances surrounding you. Like,
oh yeah, for sure.
Like you can't look at someone or you can't say that for everyone. Definitely not.
Yeah.
Like for someone who is very wealthy and has been able to accrue a lot of money throughout the years, like they have a higher chance of being happier in their older age and following that correlation versus someone who has never had money and has always had to work very hard for it and live paycheck to paycheck. They're not going to grow in that happiness as much, I wouldn't think.
I think, I'm trying to remember because it's been a little while since I listened to it. I don't really remember what the source was, but I think they're talking about that it does, like, regardless of the income, it does generally follow that same curve.
Interesting.
Just because a person has, a lot of money and, they can have a very comfortable retirement doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to be happy.
Right.
It could be a rather hollow existence.
But still, that having money helps to alleviate stress and not have to worry so much about, am I going to be able to feed myself tomorrow or even tonight kind of situation. But
even that could be the sort of thing where it's all relative. If that's been a person's experience for most of their life, maybe somehow things still generally trend to get a little better with time. But obviously, it's each situation is going to be different. But it was kind of an interesting thing. And to me, it was a surprise to hear that, it rises all the way through the 70s and only at a certain point when, things start breaking down that maybe not quite as much fun.
Things start breaking down.
Yes.
Speaking on that, I'm going to roll with that transition there. I got my repair bill for Sony for my A7R2. So
yeah. So what all? How did that work out?
So you have to pay the bill before they do any of the work and all that kind of thing, of course. So I'm hoping to have the camera back by the time that this episode goes live, at the very least.
Mm-hmm.
It really shouldn't be that intensive of a repair for them to do. It's just the board that is connected to the SD card slot and everything, I guess, has to be replaced, whatever. So hopefully I will hear from that soon, but ended up being a little over $500 for the repair. for the estimate.
That's a little more than I was thinking.
Yeah,
I had guessed it'd be 200 something.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely steeper than. So I sent out an email to 2 different places, and the place that I ultimately sent it to is who Sony Alpha uses for all of their repairs. It's one of their, like, if you're part of the Sony Alpha program, that's where they send it. That's where Matt has had his camera sent.
Is it Precision Camera? Is that the name of the place?
Yeah.
I remember that from my days working at the camera store.
Yep. So that's where I ultimately sent it to. I got a quote that was a little bit less from another place, but you also don't know in terms of, like, I feel a little bit better sending it over to Precision just because Matt's had his cameras sent over there.
Yeah.
I know it's authorized by Sony as a repair station. This other place that I emailed, they say that they're authorized, and they came back a little bit cheaper, but also you send it over there and they could be like, oh, well, because of looking at this, it's going to be more anyway. So it would have been a lose-lose there, I think. But regardless, it will be getting fixed up shortly and hopefully back in my hands to play around some more and have no issues in the future.
Nice.
So
yeah, I mean, that'll certainly be good, because that's got to be frustrating with something as simple as, the memory card isn't going in there; it's not staying in there.
Yeah,
I guess there's my dog is now making his opportunity to join the podcast. He heard that there's no other puppies in there, so might as well get some small dog barking in the background.
I mean, hey, why not? Yeah, it's good.
Yeah.
What else do we got on my list here? Oh, going back to the Instagram Reels thing too.
Yeah.
So I saw an artist. She's a painter that I follow on there for right now, at least. I tend to follow and then unfollow people when I get bored with them. So she recently announced that she is making a calendar, that she has a calendar available for pre-orders. And I was looking through her story that she had posted, and she linked to an old reel that she had posted this time last year of hand making a calendar, where she had gone through and printed out everything, all the pages herself, and had this machine that helped to punch the holes in and that helped to run the wires. It was similar format to what Thomas Heaton's calendars are, or at least were a couple years ago.
Single page, yeah.
Yeah. Single page, vertical orientation, kind of long, more of a rectangle than a square. Mm-hmm. So I was looking through that, and I had thought about running calendars prior. Like, I think every landscape photographer at least thinks of doing a calendar once or twice throughout their career.
Yeah.
And I could never really find anywhere near me or online that was able to do calendars in the way that I want it, because I like the look that Thomas Heaton's has, that this artist has, that a couple others who do something similar with it have.
Yeah, it's a really classy look.
Exactly, yeah. And it also provides a lot of real estate for the photographs, which obviously, if you're selling a photography calendar, that's kind of important. So,
yeah.
I had thought then, because I couldn't find anyone, I had thought maybe this was 2 years ago or so, about doing them myself, and just seeing this reel pop up and trying to figure out how to go about doing that. It's something that I am, again, considering how to do. But the machine that she uses is like $1,200 for it. I'm like, ooh, that's a little steep.
And it's going to be pretty expensive to print them yourself. Because to use a decent paper and then the ink, and then, you'd run into some issues with regard to, you print enough prints in a row and eventually things start working not quite right.
Yeah.
But I guess it all comes down to like the number that you sell. And it would be, I think, a fair amount of work to do. But, it all certainly comes down to how many you make. And also there's just that sort of learning experience of seeing what you like and going from there.
Yeah. I mean, it just really, the whole making them myself plays into not only the fact that I have a small audience right now, just in general, that would more than likely support my work. And on top of that, you have that yearning that I still can't get away from, of doing things with with my hands and making with my hands.
Yes, making tangible things is very important.
Exactly. Yeah. Earlier this week, I went through and I was journaling and thinking about how that question of photography being art or not, and the fact that I'm not, even with film, I felt this way, where I'm not really producing anything super tangible by my own abilities. It's like I'm taking a photograph of something that's already there versus making an interpretation of something that was there or could be. You know what I mean? It's like it's a different kind of talent, and it's weird for me to be in that kind of mix.
Yeah. Yeah, there was that has me thinking a little bit about something I saw. I not too long ago subscribed to Paramount Plus, which has CBS on there as well as so many things, and I was watching CBS on Sunday morning, and there's the show that they've had for the longest time, which a lot of the ads are for like dentures and stuff. So it's for my demographic. But I remember watching that show like as a kid, and at the end of the show, they would have just like, just a little bit of uninterrupted nature stuff, which I'd always remembered, and I still enjoy that. But there was this the story they're doing about an author who wrote his book completely just in notebooks. Like, he didn't do it on a computer, just wrote it with one pen. And they're flipping through the pages. It was kind of, a little bit further out because he didn't want them to be able to actually read what was on there. But just the fact that the entire novel was written by hand, and just all like the scratched notes in there, taking up every square inch of every single page. And then for that to come together, but just, starting with something tangible in that sense, and something about the creative process and the feedback he would have based on the feel of the pen on the paper with the specific pen that he likes. So there's something very, very important about that for sure. Yeah,
I mean, a lot of the articles or even the journaling that I write, I was thinking about that too recently, the fact that I journal in a physical notebook. I'm like, this could be so much easier for these fleeting thoughts, or if I would just have my phone with me and like write them down in my phone as like, use that as a journal instead, like have a running notes page or whatever, and have a new entry for it. But like you were saying, there's something so important about that feeling of like hand or pen to paper connection, and to be actually able to write things out. I do the same thing with my essays and the articles that I write and everything. They almost always start on paper, because it's just a different way of thinking. And I think that there are correlations too of your ability to remember things is a lot greater when you're actually writing instead of typing.
Yeah. Do you find that it's more of a fluid process for getting your thoughts out that way versus typing? I mean, I would imagine so, right?
Yeah. I mean, there's not that same fear of the white blank space in front of me.
Yeah.
Like that cursor isn't just
the judgment of the blinking cursor. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, I can write a lot more freely. I don't feel so bad if I don't sit down, or if I can't sit down and break through an article all at once or all at one time. If I have to go back to it, I have one that's sitting on my desk right now that I just tore the pages out from the little pad that I have and stapled them together. I'm like, this isn't complete yet, not even close, but it's there. It's getting there, and I can come back to it, and I will come back to it. Whereas if I have just a document that's floating in my computer, I tend to lose them. And unless I keep that, like I use IA Writer for all of my stuff, and unless I keep that open, I tend to forget about unfinished works until I have like physically go through my documents.
Yeah, it's kind of out of sight, out of mind kind of thing.
Exactly.
Yeah, I'm planning on. So for the spring trip, I didn't do the handwritten journals just because my backpack was already stuffed. It would have been a little bit much to add on to what I was already doing. But for the fall trip, I'll be doing the handwritten journals again, and I am going to try to just be as in the moment as possible, as in the present tense when I'm writing stuff, and just take that as an opportunity to just stop somewhere, just describe what I'm seeing around me. And I think there's something about that which really helps to just take in everything more, just the stopping, slowing down, thinking about what I'm seeing, reflecting on all my senses. And I found that to be a very interesting part of the process. And in the moment, as I'm writing stuff down, it just feels a little bit like gibberish. It doesn't really feel very cohesive. But after I read it back, with some separation from it, I read through stuff. I'm like, wow, that was, that was pretty good. I wasn't really expecting for it to make that much sense.
Yeah, that happens to me all the time when I'm writing. I'll be like in the moment, I'm constantly thinking, oh, this is trash. Like I need to reword this, or this sentence doesn't fit right. But if I just push through those thoughts and get everything out, I'll go back and I'll reread it. And I'm like, oh, yeah, this does make sense. Like this does all flow together, at least somewhat comprehensibly. Like needs work, but still. Yeah. So. Yeah.
And there's another thing too, where like if there's something I start writing something, I'm like, this isn't going anywhere. I'll scribble it out and kind of start over. And there's something very satisfying about just scribbling it out. Just like, yeah, sure. That didn't work out, but it was very satisfying to end that and then, start fresh with something new. And I don't get that same sort of satisfaction if I'm typing, just going like delete, 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 delete. It's not the same thing. I guess it'd be like with the old cell phones, the old flip phones, you just flip it to end the conversation. It was very, very satisfying. Whereas, pull out your iPhone and you hit the little button, bloop, it's just not the same.
Yeah. The other thing that I hate about typing, and I don't really face this so much with IA Writer because I'd have that feature disabled, but I don't care for spell check while I'm writing. Like I don't really care I don't care if correlation is spelled wrong when I'm writing it out. Like I just want to, I know what I'm trying to say. I'll get there back around to it later on, but if I see that like little red underline, or especially with Microsoft Word, if you have like certain grammatical things that are grammatical checkers that are on and everything, you have all these underlines on the page while you're typing. I'm like, I don't want to see any of this.
Yeah. It pulls you right out of the flow state. It's kind of like you're doing something else and there's just someone standing over your shoulder like, you're doing it wrong. You're doing it wrong. Yeah. That wasn't, why are you doing that?
Yeah. And then I always feel like I have to go and, all right, well, that's spelled wrong. So right click that, fix that. All right, now that's fixed. And where was I again?
Yeah. And by then the thought is gone. Yeah. It just disrupts the flow.
Exactly. You just killed that flow entirely. Yeah. I'm like, now I have to work for another 20 minutes of nonsense to get back to it. Like, at least with paper, I don't have to deal with it.
Yeah. Yeah. There's something definitely very, very magical about that process. And I'm looking forward to, on the fall trip, seeing how that unfolds, because it was great from just a psychological standpoint on that trip. So it's something that benefited me. It allowed me to get a better sense of my priorities. It made me more grateful for where I was and for what I was doing, as opposed to just going through the motions. And so I'm definitely looking forward to doing that. It's definitely something that's very, very helpful.
Yeah. And that's, again, ties right into another thing that I've been thinking about recently is my identity as a creator. And right now I'm in that kind of flux of where do I prioritize my writing versus my photography? So I'm in between these two identities of, am I a photographer who writes, or am I a writer who photographs? And it may seem like a silly question, and I mean, ultimately, perhaps it is, but it seems as though it has at least some influence in shaping the path that I will ultimately take, and which one I will prioritize as I continue to work on my website, since I'm always fiddling with that. Just seeing like what kind of products, or like, do I want to sell prints, or do I just want to focus on getting my written work out there, or how does everything kind of play in together? It like goes right alongside too with ebooks and a bunch of other things, presentations, all of that.
Yeah. Do you think it's because the you feel like the world is making you have to choose between those things, or do you think it's just because it's like your own imperative that you figure out, how to define yourself in that sense?
The question was really driven, at least this time around, by my trying to figure out my website situation. Which is just very basically like I'm working on reorganizing my galleries and thinking about whether I want to add a print shop and that kind of stuff. So real basic changes to it. But a lot of it stems from the influences that I've been taking on recently are a lot of different writers primarily versus other photographers when it comes to website design. And just, I tend to read a lot more from other people rather than look at photographs from others.
Yeah.
So that really has played a lot of influence into the whole situation, into the whole question.
Yeah. Yeah. But also it would seem that, the ability to do both of them well is not super common. I mean, there's people that write very well. There's people that take pictures that are pretty good and maybe write out of necessity. So maybe the kind of the identity is the writer and the photographer. I mean, there's no nothing really saying that you can't. I do know how with social media, for example, it tends to funnel you into one sort of category. Like, oh, I am this versus that. And I don't know if in the past, before Instagram and all that sort of stuff, or even before people were having websites, whether they would be funneled into selecting one sort of thing like people seem to be nowadays. But maybe it's true also in the past, but I feel like that's a byproduct of sharing things electronically.
Along with perhaps a byproduct of that whole jack of all trades, but master of none.
Yes.
But that last section of the quote getting cut off like all the time.
Yes.
So, I mean, what is that whole quote? It's jack of all trades, master of none, but oftentimes better than a master of one. A jack of all trades is a master of none, but oftentimes better than a master of one.
That puts a lot more meaning to it.
Yeah, it does. But I don't know. Just plenty of things to think about as I'm watching puppies run around and play and torment me.
Yes. Yeah, I will say that I'm glad that Oliver is at the point where he's just well behaved, doesn't get into trouble. He gets into, I mean, I took him to the dog park this morning. He was playing with his buddy, this German Shepherd, and he came home just absolutely covered in drool and sand as always. But
delicious.
Yeah. So I had to wipe him down. Didn't quite require a bath, but yes, I'm glad he's at the phase where he's beyond that. He can be at home. He's not going to chew on any flip flops or anything. But yeah, I also know how much work it gets to that point. So you're going to have a pretty long road ahead. But it should be fun, especially when you look back at how little she was when you got her, and all the puppy antics. Yeah,
I found a calculator online specifically to her breed, or at least to doodles in general, just to get an idea of like an estimate of how big she's going to be based on her weight now. And they're saying around like 12 to 13 pounds. So
okay, that's basically the exact same weight as Oliver.
Okay, that's kind of what I figured looking at their stories and everything.
Yeah,
kind of figured they would be same.
We very much appreciate the fact that he's a little guy, where if something happens, you can easily pick him up. If you he's easy to control in that sense. I hear stories from other people at the dog park about the things that has happened with their dogs, and usually it's a result of the dog being a little bit larger and more powerful and being able to get into more trouble. But the little ones can be fun.
Right now, between Lucy and Emmy is around 3.5 pounds right now, I think. And Lucy is around like 6 pounds. And feeling that like just what should be a small difference between the two of them, I can pick Emmy up and throw her around like nothing. Like that's nothing to me. And whereas with Lucy, you grab her, you pick her up, and I'm like, this is going to be a problem in about 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Like, you're already going to be at Emmy's max size in less than a month, somewhere around that. Like, she's going to be a little bit heftier of a dog where I can't just scoop her up in my one hand and move her, like you were saying, to a different situation, to a different place. So. Yeah.
When we got our first pet, Finley, the orange tabby cat, he was a kitten. And when I was at work at the time when my wife brought him home, and he was about as small as a kitten as you can get for when they're able to be adopted out. And she released him into the house, and then she couldn't find him. And so I'm like, well, he's got to be here somewhere. And so I got out a flashlight, I started looking, and sure enough, I found him underneath the refrigerator.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So he's able to kind of crawl to the side, then underneath. And so now I look at him and I'm like, yeah, it's kind of funny how he's just like a normal cat. He's probably like, 12 pounds or so.
Yeah.
But yeah, this guy, when he was littler, was hiding underneath appliances. So yeah, it's the good old days.
Yeah, I don't think Emmy will fit underneath any appliances just yet. She's constantly underfoot, though. The number of times that I have accidentally like nudged her or kicked her with my foot or stepped on her, I'm like, could you like aside of me maybe like announce your presence, something? But yeah.
Oliver will avoid us. He does a really good job avoiding us. Finley will stick his paw out underneath your foot because he learned early on that if his paw actually gets stepped on, he gets a treat. So he'll just stick his paw out, and you feel a little something there. And so he's just become a menace in that sense.
Nice. They always seem to find some kind of way to get attention from you, like to get a treat, they always want to game something.
The system. Yeah,
exactly. Like the number of times that our old dog Maggie would like feign being hurt or something because she's like, I want a treat or I want attention, like rub my shoulder because you yelled at me the wrong way or something stupid like that. Like,
I hope you enjoyed our creative banter. You can learn more about Cody's work by visiting his website, codyschultz.com. And you can find my work at benhorn.com. For further discussion, join us at patreon.com/creativebanter. It's a place where we can interact with you, the listener. And although we greatly appreciate those who contribute by joining a tier, discussions are open to everyone, whether you're a paying member or not. Thanks so much for listening, and we'll see you around next time.